On my second morning at Willow Creek, a woman I had never met called to ask where she should leave the keys to my house after the final walkthrough. I told her she had the wrong number. She read my name back to me. Arthur Delaney. Then she read my address. 14 Maple Street. I was sitting on the edge of a bed in a furnished apartment my son had told me I would need for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That was how long the repairs to my kitchen were supposed to take. "What final walkthrough?" I asked. The woman hesitated. "The buyer's walkthrough, Mr. Delaney." "What buyer?" Silence. Then she said, "Your house is under contract." I stood so quickly that the room tilted for half a second. Not because I was confused. Because I was furious. "My house is not for sale." Another pause. "Mr. Delaney, I think you should speak with Michael." Michael was my son. The same son who had packed 2 suitcases for me 3 days earlier. The same son who drove me to Willow Creek Senior Living because a burst pipe had ruined part of my kitchen floor. The same son who stood inside apartment 312 and said, "Dad, think of it as a hotel. 14 days. Maybe less." There was even a joke. He pointed toward the dining room downstairs and told me I might finally eat vegetables that had not come from a tin. I told him to go to hell. He laughed. I laughed. And 3 days later, a realtor was explaining to me that the home where I had lived with my wife for 51 years already had a buyer. "How much?" I asked. "I'm sorry? How much did somebody offer for my house?" $685,000. I actually laughed. It was not worth $685,000 to me. It was worth Rose. No appraisal knew how to price that. Rose had died 4 years earlier. We had been married for 53 years. We had lived at 14 Maple Street for 51 of them. We bought the place when the kitchen was avocado green, the basement flooded every spring and the neighbor's elm tree was larger than the house. We raised Michael there. We raised his sister, Anne, there. We painted bedrooms at midnight because somebody had changed her mind about yellow. We argued over wallpaper. We hosted 37 Christmas dinners. We sat on the front steps after my retirement party and wondered how 42 years of teaching could finish with 1 sheet cake and a clock. And when Rose became ill, I carried her tea to the bedroom every morning and pretended neither of us noticed that she had stopped drinking most of it. 14 Maple Street was not a property. It was the last place in the world where my wife had still been alive. And my son had apparently sold it while I was eating oatmeal 3 miles away. I called Michael. He did not answer. I called again. Nothing. On the 3rd call, I left a message. "You have 15 minutes to call me before I take a taxi to Maple Street and find out which lock you changed first." He called in too. "Dad? You sold my house." "No. The realtor says it is under contract. I accepted an offer." I gripped the phone. That is generally what selling means. "Nothing has closed. You have not lost anything. You moved me out. The pipe moved you out. You listed the house. Dad? Did you tell these people I moved here permanently?" Michael said nothing. That was my answer. "You lied to me. I was trying to get us to the point where we could talk without you shutting it down in the first 10 seconds. So you thought selling my house first would make me more reasonable?" "I thought getting an actual offer would make this real." "It is real. I live there." "No, Dad. Michael's voice changed. Quieter. More tired. You survived there. That sentence angered me more than the sale. I'll be home in an hour. You can. Watch me. The kitchen floor is open. Then I'll walk around it. The water is shut off. I've lived through worse. Dad, please. I almost hung up. Then he said, if you leave Willow Creek, at least wait until Ann gets here. My daughter lived 4 hours away. Why is Ann coming? Silence again. Michael. She already knows. That was the moment the argument stopped being between my son and me. My daughter knew. Michael's wife knew. A realtor knew. A buyer knew. Everyone seemed to know I had moved out of my home except the man who had supposedly moved. My name is Arthur Delaney. I was 77 years old when my children decided I needed a new life and forgot the inconvenient detail that I was still living the old one. At that moment, I believed the story was simple. I had 2 ungrateful children. A son who wanted control. A daughter who had taken his side. And a house they had already begun dividing in their minds before I was gone. I was wrong about most of that. Not all of it. Michael had lied to me. He had used authority I had given him years earlier to put the house on the market without asking me. Ann had known more than she admitted. But over the next 3 weeks I would also learn that my son had spent almost $80,000 keeping 14 Maple Street standing. That my house needed more than $200,000 of work. That Rose had hidden something from me too. And that the person who had done the best job pretending I was completely independent was me. I left Willow Creek 40 minutes later. Not dramatically. Nobody blocked the door. Nobody said I was not allowed to go. That mattered. Willow Creek was not a nursing home. It was an independent living community with apartments, meals, housekeeping, activities and a staff member who had somehow learned everybody's grandchildren's names within 48 hours. I disliked it partly because there was nothing obviously wrong with it. If it had smelled unpleasant or looked depressing, I could have hated the place honestly. Instead it had a library, a garden, a woodworking room, a cafe and a dining room where people had spent my first evening arguing about baseball with the enthusiasm of men who had finally reached an age when nobody expected them to pretend sports were not important. I hated it because Michael liked it. That was enough. A man named Frank Carver saw me waiting by the entrance with my suitcase. Frank was 81, wore red braces and had introduced himself at breakfast by saying he had spent 40 years delivering other people's mail and retired just before people stopped writing anything worth opening. "You escaping?" he asked. "Yes. Good luck." "You're not going to talk me out of it?" Frank shrugged. "I've known you 2 meals. That's not enough time to tell a grown man where to live." I liked him immediately. A taxi took me to Maple Street. The first thing I noticed was the sign. Sale pending. It stood on my front lawn beside the hydrangeas Rose had planted 23 years earlier. For a moment, I simply stared at it. Then I pulled it out of the ground. The post was longer than I expected. I nearly fell backward. That annoyed me even more. Michael arrived while I was dragging the sign toward the garage. He jumped out of his truck. "What are you doing?" "Realtor forgot her sign." "Dad?" "Do not dad me." He looked at the suitcase beside the porch. "You left?" Yes. You cannot stay here tonight. It's my house. The water is off. I know where the valve is. It is off because half the kitchen plumbing is disconnected. I walked inside. The house did not look like home. The kitchen floor had been removed from one wall to the other. Cabinets were covered in plastic. The refrigerator stood in the dining room. 3 industrial fans pointed toward exposed boards. There were boxes in the hallway. My boxes. Some were labeled Keep. Some Donate. Some Ann. Some Michael. I turned around. You packed my things. Only what was near the water damage. There is a box marked Michael in the upstairs hall. He exhaled. Ann and I started sorting while the crew was here. I'm alive. Michael flinched. That sentence finally reached him. I know. No. You know I'm breathing. That's not the same thing. I pointed toward the boxes. You've started treating me like an estate. Michael sat on one of the dining chairs. For the first time that day, he stopped defending himself. You're right. I had not expected that. It almost ruined the argument. We should not have sorted anything without you. We should not have listed the house without telling you. Then cancel it. Michael looked up. If I cancel it, will you look at the rest? What rest? He pointed upstairs. Your desk. What about it? There's a blue folder in the second drawer. I stared at him. What's in it? Everything you keep telling me is not a problem. The blue folder contained invoices. A lot of invoices. Roof repair. Furnace. Tree removal. Drain line. Electrical work. Property taxes. Insurance deductible. Some were mine. Most were marked paid by Michael. I sat at my desk. What is this? Michael remained standing in the doorway. 5 years. You've been keeping records of what you spend on me? Mom told me to. I looked up. What? After she got sick. She said you would never remember how much help you accepted because you would convince yourself you had handled it. Your mother said that? Almost exactly. How much? Michael did not answer. How much, Michael? 78,400. I stared at him. That is impossible. He pointed at the folder. Add it. I paid you back. Sometimes. The roof was insurance. Insurance covered 11,000. It cost 26. The furnace? 7,800. You said it was 4. I told you 4 because you refused to replace it when I told you the real price. So you lied. Yes. Again. Yes. Michael sat opposite me. Do you want honesty, Dad? Yes. I have been terrified of this house for 3 years. I laughed. The house. Yes. Every storm, I wonder if the basement floods. Every cold night, I wonder whether the furnace quits. Every time you do not answer your phone, I picture you on the basement stairs. You used to call me because you wanted to talk. Now half the time I call because I'm checking whether you're alive. I looked away. Michael continued. Last January, you went 3 days without heat because you thought the furnace would restart. I had space heaters. You had one space heater. You slipped on the back steps. I did not fall. You caught the railing. Same result. No. You had water in the basement for 2 weeks and put towels down because you didn't want to call me. It was not much water. Michael smiled sadly. There it is. What? You take every problem and make it one size smaller until you can say it is not a problem. I closed the folder. Cancel the sale. Okay. That surprised me again. You will? Yes. Today? Yes. Then why did we spend the last 20 minutes arguing? Because canceling the sale does not repair the house. He stood. I was wrong to make the choice for you. I'm not wrong that you need to make one. Anne arrived before dinner. My daughter had Rose's eyes and my talent for arriving prepared to argue. She carried a suitcase, 2 coffees and the expression of a woman who had spent 4 hours rehearsing sentences in a car. I did not let her use any of them. You knew? Yes. How long? About 6 weeks. You knew Michael intended to sell my house. I knew he was talking to a realtor. Anne. Yes. Her honesty irritated me. Everyone had become honest now that there was nothing left to hide. Why? Anne looked around the half-empty kitchen. Because I agreed with him that something had to change. So you two held a meeting about my life without me? Yes. She swallowed. And I am ashamed of that. Not ashamed enough to stop it. No. That answer hurt. Anne placed her coffee down. Dad, I live 4 hours away. Michael lives 12 minutes away. I get to call you on Sunday and feel like a good daughter. He gets the phone call when the furnace dies. He gets the plumber. He gets the pharmacy. He gets the storm. He gets the emergency room when you cut your hand and insist it does not need stitches. I am allowed to worry from a safe distance. He is the one whose life gets interrupted. Michael looked at his sister. He had clearly not expected her to say that. Neither had I. Anne continued. That does not give him the right to sell your house. It does not give me the right to help him. But I need you to understand why I did. You think I cannot take care of myself? No. I think you have decided that accepting care means you are not taking care of yourself. There was Rose in that sentence. Not because Anne sounded like her. Because Rose had said something similar once and I had ignored it. We spent the night at Michael's house. I refused Willow Creek. Michael refused to let me stay without running water. And refused to choose sides in what she described as 2 elderly men competing to see who could become unreasonable first. Michael objected to being called elderly. That was the first time I laughed all day. The realtor called the following morning. Her name was Diane Morales. Michael had already told her to cancel the contract. She asked to meet me personally. I assumed she wanted to convince me not to cancel. Instead, she arrived with every document she had. Mr. Delaney, she said, I owe you an apology. You believed Michael had authority. Yes. He did. That surprised me. After Rose's first serious hospitalization, I had signed a financial power of attorney naming Michael. I remembered it. What I did not remember was how broad it was. Michael had used it for years to deal with insurance, contractors and household accounts when I did not want to. Diane tapped the document. Whether this should have been used to list the property when you were capable of making the decision yourself is another matter. Michael looked down. That's why we're canceling it. Diane nodded. Then she handed me the buyer's proposal. I expected a family. There was no family. The buyer was Northline Residential Development. What is this? Diane answered. They've been purchasing properties along Maple Street. For what? Townhouses. I looked at Michael. You knew they would knock it down. Yes. There are moments when anger comes back after you thought you had used all of it. That was one. You were going to let them bulldoze your mother's house. Michael stood. Mom is not in that house. The room went silent. He immediately regretted saying it. I could see that. It did not matter. Get out. Dad? Get out. Michael left. Anne followed him. Diane sat across from me in uncomfortable silence. After a minute, she said. For what it is worth, he rejected their first offer. I looked at her. Why? They offered $620. He said the house was worth more. So he negotiated the price of my memories. Diane did not answer. Then she said, I don't know your family. But I sell houses for a living. And I can tell you something people rarely admit. The house usually means something different to the person leaving than it means to the children who grew up there. They remember a place. The parent remembers a life. I liked Diane more after that. The cancelled offer should have made me feel victorious. It did for approximately 6 hours. Then the contractor called. His name was Ed Walsh. I had known him for 20 years. Ed asked whether I wanted the honest estimate or the estimate that would allow me to sleep that night. Honest. $212,000. I thought I had misheard him. For a kitchen floor? For the kitchen floor, drainage, electrical panel, roof section, rear steps, sewer line, basement remediation and the structural work you've been postponing. I haven't been postponing structural work. Ed became quiet. Arthur. I knew that tone. I used it on students for 42 years when they knew the answer and hoped I would allow them to invent another one. How long have you known? About some of it? 3 years. Did Michael know? Yes. Did Rose? Ed paused. Some of it. There was my dead wife again. Apparently Rose had continued participating in family decisions long after I thought she was simply resting upstairs. That evening, Anne and I returned to Maple Street to sort papers. Michael did not come. I told myself I preferred that. Anne found the first envelope in the dining room cabinet. Not hidden. Not behind a false wall. It was exactly where it had been for 4 years. In the drawer where Rose kept stamps, birthday cards and coupons she would forget to use. My name was written on it. Arthur. I recognized her handwriting. I put it down. Anne stared at me. You never opened it. No. You knew it was here? Yes. Dad? Your mother gave it to me before the last hospital stay. And you never read it? No. Why? Because I knew what it was. A goodbye. I could survive Rose dying. I had no choice about that. Reading her goodbye was different. That would be participation. So I kept it in a drawer and spent 4 years telling myself I would read it when I was ready. Apparently readiness and I had different calendars. And touched the envelope. Do you want me to leave? No. My hand shook when I opened it. I hated that. Then I decided Rose had seen my hands shake before. She would not be impressed. The letter was 6 pages. The first page was exactly what I feared. She thanked me for our life. She wrote about the children. The grandchildren. The ridiculous holiday in Maine when it rained for 8 days. The argument we had about a lawnmower that lasted longer than the lawnmower. I cried before I reached page 2. Anne cried too. Then Rose changed subjects. She wrote, Arthur, I know what you are going to do when I am gone. You are going to decide that staying in this house is the same thing as staying close to me. I stopped reading. Anne looked at me. Keep going. I did. Please love this house. Do not worship it. We were happy here because we were here together. The walls did not do that. I took off my glasses. Rose continued. If there comes a day when Maple Street asks more from you than it gives back, leave without feeling that you are leaving me. I will not be offended. I laughed while crying. That sounded so much like her that for half a second I expected to hear her in the kitchen. Then came the part I had not expected. Michael will try to fix everything. Please do not punish him for that. But do not let him make choices for you just because he is frightened. And covered her mouth. I kept reading. Anne will wait to be asked because she is afraid of intruding. Ask her anyway. And you will say you are fine long after fine has stopped meaning anything. Try another word. That was Rose. Dead 4 years and still correcting my vocabulary. At the bottom of the last page, she had written one final paragraph. Getting older is not something you need to defeat. Do not turn every kindness into evidence that somebody thinks you are weak. Let the children help. Make them ask first. I sat at the dining table for a long time. And eventually reached across and took my hand. I miss her. So do I. Then I asked. Did you know about the letter? No. Michael? I don't think so. For once, Rose had managed to surprise all 3 of us equally. The next morning, I called Michael. He answered carefully. Hi, Dad. Your mother left me a letter. Silence. The one in the dining room drawer? You knew? I knew it existed. She told me not to ask whether you'd opened it. Of course she did. I heard him laugh softly. What did it say? I hesitated. Then I read him the paragraph about fixing everything. Michael became very quiet. Finally he said. She knew me. She knew all of us. Are you still angry? Yes. Fair. Are you coming over? Do you want me to? There it was. The question Rose told him to ask. Yes. We met at Maple Street. This time no realtor. No contractor. No daughter. Just Michael and me. We sat on the front steps because the kitchen still looked like a construction site. I handed him the blue folder. "I owe you $78,400. No. Yes. No. I am not having this argument. Neither am I. We were already having it. I helped because you are my father. And you lied about what you spent because you knew I would refuse. Yes. Do you see a pattern?" Michael rubbed his forehead. "Yes. Your mother says you fixed things because you were frightened." His face changed. "She's right." I had expected resistance. Instead, Michael looked toward the street. "The night Mom died, I was downstairs talking to the hospice nurse." "You were upstairs with her." "I know." I kept thinking there had to be something else to do. Another medicine. Another phone call. Another doctor. And there wasn't. Michael's voice broke. I had seen my son cry at his mother's funeral. I had not seen him cry about her since. He wiped his face. "I think I have been fixing things ever since because I cannot stand that feeling." I did not know what to say. So I put my hand on the back of his neck the way I did when he was a boy. He looked older than 52. So did I, probably. After a while I said, "Selling my house was still wrong." Michael laughed through the tears. "Yes. Just checking." I changed the power of attorney the following week. Not because I wanted revenge. Because Michael agreed I should. Ann and Michael would still be able to help if I asked. But neither could make a major housing decision for me while I remained capable of making it myself. That sentence mattered. Not because I expected them to try again. Because boundaries are easier to love when everyone knows where they are. Then I made the decision I had been postponing. I inspected my own life. Not the version I described to other people. The real one. I spent 1 week writing down everything I did because of the house. I called contractors. I checked the basement after rain. I moved rubbish bins down an icy driveway. I worried about the roof. I reset the old breaker twice. I cleaned leaves from the back steps. And every evening, I ate dinner alone at a table built for 6. That was the item I had never put on a maintenance list. Loneliness. It did not leak. It did not send an invoice. It did not make a noise loud enough for Michael to hear over the phone. It simply sat beside me every night in Rose's chair. I had told people I preferred quiet. That was true when quiet meant Rose reading at the other end of the room. It was less true after quiet became nobody. A week later, I drove to Willow Creek. My own idea. That distinction was important enough that I reminded Michael of it 3 times. I asked for another tour. The woman at reception remembered me. "Mr. Delaney. You're back." I never left. I merely conducted outside research. Frank Carver was in the cafe. He raised his cup when he saw me. "Escape didn't take? I'm visiting." "Of course." I sat with him. Frank had moved to Willow Creek after his wife died. His decision had been voluntary. That gave him a smugness I disliked. "How long did it take you to decide?" 3 years. I felt better. "I thought you were going to say immediately." Frank laughed. "I spent 46 years telling my wife I could adjust to anything. Then she died and I discovered I could not adjust the thermostat without asking where she wanted it. We sat quietly. Then I asked, "Do you miss your house?" "Every day." That was not the answer I expected. "Then why are you here?" "Because missing something is not the same as needing to live inside it." I looked at him. "Did you practice that line?" "For years." Then he added, "My house was wonderful for the life I had there. It was lousy for the life I had afterward." That sentence stayed with me. Willow Creek had a woodworking room. Michael had mentioned it during the first tour. I had refused to look. I had spent 42 years teaching shop class. Table saws, joinery, cabinet making, students who measured once despite my daily evidence that they should measure twice. The room at Willow Creek was smaller than my school workshop. But it had good equipment. A man named Leonard was building a birdhouse with a roof that would have embarrassed any bird with standards. I watched for 2 minutes. Then I made the mistake of giving advice. 3 hours later, I was still there. I went home that evening. Maple Street was quiet. I made soup. I sat at the dining table. And for the first time, instead of imagining Rose across from me, I thought about Frank insulting the coffee and Leonard ruining a birdhouse. I smiled. Then I felt guilty. That part shocked me. As though enjoying 3 hours somewhere else meant I had been disloyal to a woman who was no longer there to be abandoned. I took Rose's letter out again. I reread one sentence. "Leave without feeling that you are leaving me." The next morning, I called Diane. "I want to sell the house." She became very quiet. "Are you sure?" "No." She laughed. "That's unusually honest." "I want to sell it while I am still the one deciding." "All right." "Not to Northline." "Understood." "And I want the listing to say the house needs work." "A lot of work." "Yes." "No photographs that make the kitchen look larger than it is." "Arthur." "And don't call the dining room spacious." "It isn't." "Anything else?" "Yes. I want Michael in the room when we sign the listing." Michael came. He sat beside me. He did not say "I told you so." That may have been the greatest act of love my son performed that month. When Diane asked the asking price, Michael looked at me. I looked at him. "What?" "Nothing." "You have an opinion." "I always have an opinion." "I'm asking." Michael smiled. "Then I think Diane's number is right." That was the new arrangement. He could advise. I could ask. Neither of us had to pretend those were the same as control. We received 4 offers. One came from another developer. Highest price. I rejected it. Michael asked why. "Because I'm old and unreasonable." He laughed. "Fair." The second offer came from investors. The third was too low. The fourth came from a couple named Elena and Mark Lewis. They had 2 children. Elena taught elementary school. Mark was an electrician. They knew the house needed work. Mark actually looked excited about the electrical panel. I considered this suspicious. Their offer was $25,000 below the developer's. I took it. Michael did not argue, and asked whether I was certain. I said, no. By then my family had become accustomed to that answer. Selling a house takes paperwork. Leaving one takes everything else. That was harder. The first box took me 3 hours. Rose's cookbooks. She owned 19. She regularly used 3. I could hear her defending the other 16. Anne took 6. Michael took 2. I kept 3. The rest went to the library sale. Nobody was struck by lightning. That became the pattern. We let things go. The memories stayed. My old tools were harder. I had owned some since before Michael was born. My hand plane had belonged to my father. I could not imagine giving it away. Then Anne asked, "When was the last time you used it?" "That is irrelevant." 5 years? Possibly. 10? Do you want a cookbook or not? The high school where I taught still had a vocational program. I called the instructor. Her name was Melissa Chang. She had been one of my students. That made me feel older than Willow Creek ever had. Melissa came with 6 students and a school van. They took the workbench, clamps, planes, chisels, cabinet saw. One boy picked up my father's plane. "Mr. Delaney, how old is this?" "Older than your teacher." Melissa rolled her eyes. I showed the boy how to adjust the blade. He listened. Really listened. When the van drove away, I cried in the garage. Michael found me there. "I can get it back." "No. Dad. No." I wiped my face. "Your grandfather taught me with that plane." "I know. And now some 16-year-old who does not know which end of a board is square will use it." Michael smiled. "Grandpa would love that." "Yes. So do I." I cried a little harder after saying it. The hardest thing to remove from 14 Maple Street was not furniture. It was Rose's chair. Blue fabric. Worn armrest. Small ink stain from a pen she blamed on me for 20 years. Nobody wanted to ask what I planned to do with it. Finally, Michael said, "Will it fit in the apartment?" The apartment. By then I had chosen one at Willow Creek. Not 312. That felt too much like surrendering to Michael's original plan. I chose 207. It overlooked the garden. And it was my idea. "Yes," I said. "It will fit." So Rose's chair came with me. The sale closed on a Thursday. I stood in the empty living room that morning. The rooms echoed. For 51 years, the house had never been truly empty. Even after Rose died, her things filled it. Her clothes. Her books. Her chair. Her handwriting on labels in the pantry. Now even the furniture was gone. I walked upstairs. Michael's room first. I remembered him at 7, refusing to sleep because he believed something lived inside the closet. At 16, slamming the door because I had told him he could not use my car. At 22, standing in the same doorway before leaving for his first apartment and pretending he was not nervous. Anne's room. Yellow once. Then pink. then blue. The wall still had a tiny nail hole where Rose measured her height every birthday before deciding at 14 that the marks ruined the paint. Our bedroom last. I stood at the window. Rose and I had watched snow from there. Ambulances. Graduation mornings. Michael bringing home his first baby. Anne arriving after a divorce she had promised everyone was not hurting her. I touched the windowsill. "I'm going," I said. The room did not answer. For 4 years, I had behaved as though the house was how Rose answered me. That morning I finally understood. The answer had always been mine. Michael waited outside. I locked the front door, then unlocked it again. He said nothing. I walked through every room one more time. Then I locked it again. This time I gave Michael the key. "Take it to Diane." He closed his hand around it. "Okay." "Michael." "Yeah?" "I am still angry you tried to do this without me." "I know. But you were right that I could not keep doing it the way I was." Michael shook his head. "No. You were right about the house. I was right that something needed to change. I was wrong when I decided that meant I got to choose the change." I nodded. That difference mattered. After the sale, I repaid Michael all $78,400. He fought me for 20 minutes. I won because I had the check. Then I added another amount. $10,000. Michael stared at it. "What is that?" "Interest, Dad. Consider it compensation for every time I told you the basement was only damp." He laughed. Then he tore up the extra check. I let him. That was growth for both of us. Life at Willow Creek was not magical. I want to be clear about that. The coffee was mediocre. Frank complained professionally. The dining room served fish on Fridays with a consistency that made me suspicious of the word fish. One resident tried to recruit me for bridge 6 times despite clear evidence that I did not know the rules and lacked the desire to learn. I missed my workshop. I missed the front steps. I missed waking up in the same bedroom where Rose had slept beside me. I missed my house. But I was not unhappy. Those two things can exist together. Older people are expected to make clean emotional decisions. We are told to downsize and feel free. Move and feel safe. Sell and feel relieved. Life is rarely that polite. Sometimes the right decision still breaks your heart a little. I learned to let both feelings sit at the table. Anne began visiting once a month instead of calling every Sunday. She said driving 4 hours was inconvenient. Then she did it anyway. Michael visited less than he had when I lived alone. At first that hurt. Then I realized why. He no longer had to check on me. So when he came because he wanted to. Our conversations changed. We talked about baseball. His work. My woodworking group. His daughter Sophie. We talked less about furnaces. I recommend this for fathers and relationships. 6 months after the move, Elena Lewis called me. The woman who bought Maple Street. My first thought was that the sewer line had failed and she wanted her money back. Instead, she invited me to visit. "We finished the kitchen," she said. And Mark thought you might want to see what we did with the workshop. I said no. Immediately. Then I spent 2 days thinking about it. On Saturday, Frank asked why I was staring out the window. I told him. He said, "Go." I don't want to. Then don't. You just told me to. I'm covering every possibility. I went. Michael drove. I told him I was perfectly capable of driving myself. He said he knew. He also said he wanted to come. I let him. 14 Maple Street looked different. The hydrangeas were still there. The front door was green instead of red. I disliked that. Elena's children had left bicycles on the lawn. I liked that. Inside, the kitchen was bright. The avocado green had not returned. Rose would have appreciated that. The dining room wall was gone. I disliked that too. Then Elena's son ran through the room holding a wooden airplane. "Mom, look." He nearly collided with Michael. His mother apologized. I laughed. Michael looked at me. There had been a time when he ran through that exact room. Different walls. Same childhood. Mark showed me the workshop. He had rebuilt part of it. Small bench. Pegboard. A new table saw. On the wall was one thing I recognized. A wooden ruler. Mine. I had left it behind accidentally. Mark said, "I was going to send it to you. Keep it." "You sure?" "Yes." Then I added, "But if your boy uses the end as a hammer, I want it back." Mark laughed. "Deal." Before we left, Elena asked whether I wanted to see the upstairs. I almost said yes. Then I looked toward the staircase. I did not need to see our bedroom with somebody else's bed in it. No. I'm good. And I was. Michael and I stood on the pavement before getting into his truck. I looked back at the house. A curtain moved upstairs. One of the children appeared at the window. He waved. I waved back. Michael said, "You okay?" "Yes." Then I smiled. And this time I mean it. The strangest thing about growing older is how often people discuss loss as though it happens only once. You lose parents, friends, a spouse, a career, a home, strength, certain versions of yourself. Then one morning you realize you have spent so much time defending what remains that you have forgotten to ask whether something new might still be waiting. I did not move to Willow Creek because my son was right. I moved because once he stopped trying to make the decision for me, I was finally able to make it honestly. That is the part children sometimes misunderstand. Older parents are not always fighting the sensible choice. Sometimes we are fighting the feeling that the choice no longer belongs to us. Michael loved me. He also betrayed me. Both things were true. He was frightened and tired and trying to solve a problem I refused to acknowledge. That explained what he did. It did not make it right. I was proud and lonely and using the house to postpone another goodbye to Rose. That explained what I did. It did not make me right either. Families become dangerous when explanation is confused with permission. They become stronger when people can say, "I understand why you did it. And you still should not have." I still have Rose's chair. It sits beside the window in apartment 207. The blue fabric looks worse in daylight than it did at Maple Street. I refuse to have it recovered. Some evenings I sit there and read. Some evenings Frank knocks on the door and complains about dinner. Some evenings I walk downstairs to the workshop and help Leonard construct birdhouses that birds might actually agree to occupy. Anne calls. Michael visits. My granddaughter Sophie steals the biscuits I keep for visitors and denies it while chewing. Life is smaller than it once was. But smaller is not the same as less. Last winter, on the anniversary of Rose's death, I read her letter again. For years I had feared those pages because I thought they contained her final goodbye. They did. But I had misunderstood goodbye. I thought saying goodbye meant closing something. Rose used it to open a door. Her last line said, "Arthur, please do not spend whatever years you have left proving you could live without me. Live them." I had read that sentence many times by then. That night it finally felt different. I folded the letter. Put it in the drawer beside my chair. Then I went downstairs. Frank had convinced 6 people that a card tournament needed me despite my repeated objections. Leonard was arguing with somebody about baseball. There was terrible coffee. I joined them anyway. For 51 years, 14 Maple Street was my home. I will never call that a mistake. It held the best years of my life. But a home can finish being your home without becoming meaningless. A marriage can end without the love ending. A parent can need help without becoming helpless. A child can make a terrible decision without becoming a terrible child. And an old man can change his mind without admitting that everybody else owned it first. That last one took me 77 years. My son moved me out for 2 weeks. Then he tried to sell my house. I stopped him. I made him cancel the sale. And weeks later, I sold the house myself. Somebody might say that means Michael was right from the beginning. He wasn't. Because the destination was never the real argument. The argument was who got to choose the road. He knows that now. So do I. And if Rose were here, I suspect she would remind both of us that she had known it all along. I would tell her not to be smug. She would be smug anyway. That is one thing I still miss every day.